Welcome to Two Way. Thank you for joining. This is a special Memorial Day edition of Two Way tonight on what is for many a favorite topic. Throughout my career, there have been people in journalism and politics who say, oh, it's far too early to talk about the next presidential election. Far too early. And the fact is, leaving aside the obsession that some people have because they think this is just so interesting, I find it, kind of interesting. The reality is stuff's happening right now. And particularly on the Republican side, I see potentially a very accelerated process and a very unique process potentially that could determine the top of the ticket and maybe the bottom of the ticket. And on the Democratic side, because of the vacuum, not having House of Senate or the White House, and no front runner, just that I would argue, and we'll talk about this, I think it's the most wide open race for either party that I've seen, truly. There's a lot going on and a lot to discuss. So we have some great guests here today. We welcome your questions here on the Two Way platform. Raise your hand if you want to get in on the conversation. We're going to run through some general stuff. We're going to drill down on specific potential candidates. And by the end of it, you're welcome to go to Vegas or Ladbrokes and put, or Poly Market, and put down just like $1 billion or whatever you have in your pocket, because I think we're going to solve it. I think we're going to have at least, we may not have the presidential winner by the end of our hour, but I do believe we'll have the nominees. Not really. All right. Let's bring in our guests. And I'd say we're going to introduce them, but really we're going to reintroduce them because they are all what they call in my household two-way stalwarts. And couldn't be happier to have them all here. And I'm going to bring them all in and then introduce them. One of them's not quite here yet. All right. With us, the co-authors. Nothing better than having co-authors because it's always, John Allen and Amie, the three most complicated human relationships are landlord, tenant, mother, daughter, and co-authors. Amie Parnes and John Allen are here, co-authors of Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. It may not be the most publicized book about the last presidential campaign, but it's the best. Thank you both for joining. I was supposed to get a smile out of at least one of you. You guys just
smiling.
Poker faced. All right. And then Alex Castellanos is here, a longtime Republican strategist whose fingertip feel for who's going to earn his party's nomination is as sensitive as his understanding of the Democratic Party is completely insensitive, which doesn't keep him from regularly opining on the Democrats. I'm kidding. Alex is, as amongst the Republicans I know, is as understanding of the other culture as much as any. There's some as equal, but Alex is excellent. Welcome. And then Nomi Konst, who's been with us before, Democratic strategist, and the rare Democratic strategist who supported Bernie Sanders, who can speak not just intelligently, but affectionately about the establishment wing of the party, which is a rare trait indeed. Thank you all for joining. And as I said, there's other people on here we'll be anxious to hear from who don't know maybe twice as much as our four guests, but know quite a bit. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining.
I love the cigar.
Yeah.
If Alex is going to smoke, I am too.
Okay.
Whoa,
Ladies, as we say, we have two slogans of Two Way: conversations like no other, and smoke them if you got them. So feel free. Thank you again. Grateful to have you all on here. Okay, so let's start. There's so many ways we could start, but here's how I want to start. The Free Press, end of last week, had a story about Rahm Emanuel. The reporter went and had lunch, 2-hour lunch with Rahm, and came away, as others who've talked to Rahm lately have, saying, looks like he's going to run. So, Amie, start with you. Let's say Rahm runs. Is he a first-tier candidate, second-tier candidate, third-tier candidate, and why?
I would say third tier. I just don't, Rahm, for those of us who know him, is an establishment figure, obviously in Washington, has been around a long time, recently served as ambassador, Chicago mayor. But I think he has a long way to go in terms of name recognition. He's not the most, shall we say, pleasant person to be around sometimes. So I think that will play into it. But I think there are other candidates that people are looking at right now.
All right. So you say third tier, and I'm not challenging you because if I'll probably end up in the same place as you. But Nomi, if you go have lunch at the Grill Room, or go have lunch at the Capitol Grill, or go to anywhere where Obama Clinton types congregate, they're pining for Rahm. They think Rahm is the strongest candidate in many cases. So who's right, Amie or the Obama-Clinton wing of the Democratic Party?
Well, John and Amie have done a lot of work basically realizing how accurate the Obama and Hillary wing are in predicting elections. So I would go with Amie. Amie is right. And, and some of that is just demographics. I mean, the Democratic Party is...
I'm sorry, I got to stop you because I've made a mistake. And I make this mistake too often. Amie, third tier to win the nomination or third tier to win the general?
To win the nomination.
Okay, that's what I meant. So just want to make sure. No, I apologize for interrupting, but we're talking just about his chances of winning the nomination. Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if the Democratic Party is still running itself the way it has been for the last 15 to 20 years, then he has a shot, but I don't think he's, even among the consultant class, I don't think he's a top tier candidate for them. He might be a tool for them, a weapon in a multi-way primary. He's a bulldog. I think he can beat up on people that they may not want to make it to the first tier or to the final round, whatever you want to say that is. But I don't think that that's the DNC that we have today. I think it's going to be a very different DNC. It's just gotten way out of hand and had its hubris moment. Hopefully.
Okay, gentlemen, my gut is that Rahm appeals more to men than women. That's just my gut. And so the ladies here put him in third or weak second tier. John Allen, where's Rahm for the nomination for you? Tier 1, 2, 3, or do you want to shove him down to the mythical tier 4?
No, I mean, I'm gonna. So number one, I'll say he starts out as a second tier candidate, but moving toward first tier, and here's why. There's nobody in the Democratic Party that communicates as aggressively or clearly as Rahm Emanuel. And if you put a bunch of people on a debate stage, he's going to stand out for that. And I agree with Nomi that he could be a bulldog. He could be somebody that's in there to take out somebody else. But Rahm Emanuel is too old for that. He's not here for somebody else. He's here for Rahm Emanuel. I think the bigger questions for him are going to be, can he get name recognition? Can he get fundraising? I mean, he's got a guy in his own home state, J.B. Pritzker, who could literally write a 10-figure check for himself whenever he chooses to, or whatever the biggest possible check. So can Rahm, who is a monster fundraiser for other people, do that for himself? Can he get out there and get the name recognition? But if you put him on a debate stage with other Democrats, he's going to pull their pants down. I mean, he's that tough, and I think that a lot of Democratic voters are looking for that in their next nominee.
Funny you say you use the metaphor because you meant figuratively. Rahm pulled the pants down. Rahm uses literally wrong as often as Joe Biden. So if Rahm were here, he would say, I would literally pull their pants down. Alex, are you with the gentleman camp or the lady camp where Rahm is? John has him 2 rising to 1. The ladies have him a generous 3.
I agree with the ladies, but I side with John nevertheless. Why? I know Rahm. I love Rahm. He's the most Republican Democrat we can get out of Chicago. The problem is if you're making the movie about a presidential candidate and a campaign, he'd be the president's grumpy assistant, not the president. And however, something has changed in the Democratic Party now with Biden. And he's created, I think, a non-ideological opportunity for a candidacy. Rahm can't compete in a party that's all about who can go farther to the left and be more woke and all of those things. But if there's a contest about, if you vote for me, you know who's going to be president. If you vote for them, they're all the ones who defended the sham presidency, and Rahm could be the anti-politician. So I think there's an authenticity candidacy that's possible there. And I still remember when Bernie Sanders got his pants yanked down by the Democratic establishment and by all the Democratic the super delegates, and said, no, Bernie, it's not you, it's going to be Joe Biden. So now, what I do agree with the ladies about is that if it comes to that, is Rahm still the most electable,
right,
establishment type Democrat? And maybe not.
Right. So a couple things. I'd love to have everything everybody said. So Rahm, I think, has two big problems. He's got many more than two, but he's got two big problems as I see it to be the nominee. One is he has no biographical narrative the way every nominee has had. He really doesn't. Rahm's actual biographical narrative is poison for the general election, the Democratic electorate. And two, the base hates him. And they'll hate him even more after someone comes after him from the left. To me, that makes it a non-starter. However, okay, you win the nomination by getting the virtuous, what I call the virtuous cycle going. You raise money, you get good press clips, your polls go up. You go back to the donors with your polls going up. You raise more money, you get good press clips, right? That's the virtuous cycle. Now, people like Bernie don't necessarily need that because they have a movement. But if you're a normal candidate, you do. Take Pritzker out of the equation, okay? Because he can self-fund. I look at this list of candidates, broad list. Three kinds of fundraising, right? There's bundling, okay? There's grassroots, and there's a super PAC. So let's start with Rahm and the super PAC. How much, if Rahm goes all in, let's say Ari doesn't write a $500 million check, or he could though. If Rahm goes all in, who will raise more in their super PAC than Rahm? Tell me. Name a Democrat who might run who will raise more in their super PAC than Rahm. Go ahead. I'll wait. Tick tock. I wish I had that clock sound from the Biden her deposition or
Possibly Newsom. Possibly Newsom.
Possibly, although as you know, Amy, I don't think he's going to run, but possibly Newsom. I accept that. Anybody else?
I'm going to throw Tulsi Gabbard.
No. First of all, she's not going to run. She's not going to run as a Democrat.
No, I think she's so crazy that she probably would have done it, and then she's going to take Republican money and put it into super PAC.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris.
Fair enough.
I strongly dissent. Does anyone agree with John that Kamala Harris could raise as much in a super PAC?
Yes, yes, but it's because I would contribute.
Right. Very funny. All right. Okay. All right. So you've named two Californians.
What about AOC? Because she's going a little bit more mainstream, and I wouldn't put that off the table for her.
Super PAC? Come on.
I don't think she's like Bernie, that she's not that pure.
Super PAC? No, I'm not saying she wouldn't try. I just don't think she'd get the same amount as Rahm. Okay, so that's super PAC. Let's all agree for a super PAC, Rahm is top tier, right? And I believe possible Rahm would raise significantly more than anyone else into a super PAC. I believe it's possible because I think Ari could write him a $200 million check. And Rahm knows lots of people who could write $50 million checks.
He worked in private equity.
Yeah. Well, he worked in private equity.
Let's just start with that.
And he was head of the DCCC, and he played at the top levels. Okay, so that's first. Second, bundling. Who could bundle more than Rahm? Max checks in Chicago, New York, LA, Atlanta. Who could bundle more than Rahm of all the candidates? Maybe Gavin and Kamala again, right? But do you see anybody else who could bundle? Shapiro?
Yeah, I think he could.
Yeah, possibly.
And I think that's the threat.
But not with Rahm in the contest.
Exactly.
Without putting too fine a point on it, they would be competing for the same bundle.
Yeah. What Pat Buchanan would call New York bankers.
But who could raise
I say this as a Jew, just to be clear.
But fundraising is also centralized for the big dogs, but decentralized with the little people out there, and that's not Rahm's game.
Right. So that's the third. That's the third bucket, which is grassroots, right? Which is the way Bernie money bombs. Right. So let's move to that. We'll move off of Rahm. We could talk about Rahm for the full hour, but we won't. Grassroots fundraising is great for the virtuous cycle because not only do you save candidate time because you don't have to go to fundraisers, but you get great press coverage and the cash register just cha-chings. So we all know AOC, if she runs, will be a great grassroots fundraiser. It's a mystery to me who is a good grassroots fundraiser. Mostly it's digital, right? Marco Rubio in 2016 should have been a world-class grassroots fundraiser. Barely raised a thing. I believe it's one of the most undercovered stories in presidential primaries, presidential politics. What makes for a great grassroots fundraiser? So I ask you, of the Democrats, besides AOC, Kamala, Shapiro, Whitmer, Newsom, Pritzker, Beshear, Gallego, Moore, Buttigieg, Waltz, who else could be a good grassroots fundraiser besides AOC? Amy.
Possibly more, because I'm hearing a lot of continued buzz around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a little skeptical because I feel like Democrats love to make the Obama comparison. It's old and tired, but they kind of look at him as like the next Barack Obama, and he couldn't be more different than Obama. I mean, I was talking to a big bundler about him the other day, and I think that they're two different people, but I think that he is beginning to gain momentum, a momentum that I'm not seeing in other candidates right now.
Does anybody know? Does Wes Moore, who says he's not running, but then of course Barack Obama said he wasn't running. Does Wes Moore have a good list? Does he have a grassroots list? I don't know. Does he? I bet it's not that big.
It
I
doesn't
mean, all of them
matter.
have really strong digital games right now. I mean, it's kind of malpractice to not have one, but I am hearing the same thing Amy's saying is people are talking about Wes Moore, Bashir, Pete, strong lists, I think.
Okay. So I think Pete would be a good grassroots fundraiser. John Allen, would Andy Bashir raise a lot of money with a money bomb on Twitter?
No, not right now. I mean, let's see what it looks like in a couple of years. But here's who I would say: Pete Buttigieg, who ran already, who has a huge following, who has in the LGBTQ community has a national network of people that watched him run before. You know, it's always helpful to be able to go to sort of a segment of the population when you're talking about grassroots fundraising. We talk about all these other candidates who are very state specific. Pete Buttigieg is not that, so I think he's somebody who could do it. And I'll go right back to Harris again, who has a bigger fundraising list than Kamala Harris. And this is my point about her with the big fundraising too, which is this is somebody who already has relationships with the big donors and with the small donors in a way that other candidates don't. That doesn't mean she can raise like she did for a presidential general, but it does mean to me that she has the capacity to raise pretty quickly, a lot of money pretty quickly if she wants to.
Alex, regardless of party, clearly what helps to be a good grassroots fundraiser, large and active social following on X and Instagram and TikTok. Going on TV a lot, I think, helps because you go on and you say, give me some money. What other traits are allow someone to raise tens of millions on the web?
Well, in all the levels, I think we're trying to eat the turkey before we've cooked it. Barack Obama didn't have that big fundraising base, top or bottom, until he exploded onto the national scene. Some of these candidates may have the ability to do that. I think Amie mentioned Wes Moore. There's a big vacuum in the party that no one has yet filled. And if you're thinking about just raw sex appeal, Wes Moore, moderate.
You're not. I say respectfully, you're not answering my question. If you were building a Frankenstein candidate,
Wes Moore, moderate left of center type candidate with military background.
No, I'm asking more specifically, not what makes a strong candidate, because Marco Rubio had great traits too, and he was not a strong grassroots fundraiser. What are the traits that make a strong grassroots fundraiser?
The most important trait, I think, is to have a huge villain to run against and to have an inspirational vision and purpose for the voters. Barack Obama didn't, what characteristics? I mean, he went into states like North Carolina and found he'd already built a machine there, a get out the vote machine and an internet, megalith, and hadn't been to the state at all. So you're asking what traits? Well, be Jesus, be inspirational and have an enemy. We haven't mentioned, so I do think somebody like Wes Moore could pop that balloon, but we haven't really mentioned Shapiro either, except Amie, I think, once. There's somebody else who could have big money and look at what's happening around the country now, in Washington now. This could be a growing issue that mobilizes a campaign through the election, certainly enough to fund a big campaign.
I'm skeptical that he'll be a good grassroots fundraiser if he runs, but I might be wrong. I never read the chat, as regular viewers know, but I glanced at it, and Mark Bednar put something in the chat. He's a Republican strategist that I think is right about how to raise grassroots money. Mark.
Yeah, well, Mark, you touched on it, that a big social media follower, I think, can have a
Mark, we're having trouble hearing you. I don't know if you can switch to a different connection, or maybe even turn off your video.
Give me ones.
Go ahead, try now.
Is that better?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So a big social media following is only valuable if you have a political moment that can distribute it. So for instance, Cory Booker having a big, his big filibuster speech about nothing, but he raised a ton of money instantly through a million different organizations right after it. Trump getting arrested, having the mugshot. That is a big moment that only if you have a moment like that is there actually a value in your big social media database. But you got to find your moment. Sometimes you got to create them. But it's the creative candidates, the creative teams that decide, really how you get the juice to get that grassroots money.
Totally agree. Great point. Go ahead.
That's true, but insufficient. You have to have something those are the notes on the sheet of music, and those notes are great, and they do exactly what Mark is saying. But if you don't weave that together into something that sings, you cannot maintain a large purpose that will get you all the way through a campaign. So I don't think it's particular candidate quality. I think it's almost religious inspiration and a quick definition of Satan that you're going to rescue people.
Members of Congress to become fundraising machines is that you have to say something that at least sounds bold and extreme. And you have to sound like you're saying something that nobody else is willing to say. And we've watched this for the last CSAN's celebrating some anniversary this year. I can't remember, 45, 50, whatever. But what we've seen is the polarization of our politics happen in front of our very eyes with this incredible money incentive, grassroots fundraising incentive of saying the most extreme sounding thing you possibly can, which militates against sometimes actually winning a party's nomination, because then some of the people in the party become afraid that you will be too extreme for the general election. And I think Donald Trump's kind of on the Republican side, who obviously has big fundraising, $250 million was spent by Elon Musk last time on him, and also a huge grassroots list, has figured out kind of the formula of how to say things that really energize his base, energize those grassroots fundraisers, and still not become so toxic to his own party that he's not only is he not the nominee, but he ran away with it.
Right. Okay. I want to give you a premise and then first Nomi and then Amie. Almost everyone I talk to, and this has been in the public realm, so this isn't like my secret sources, but the people I talk to say the same thing. Members of the party, elected officials, as strategists, activists, donors. The nominee should be and will be a governor or an outsider. It's not going to be a member of Congress. First of all, Nomi, are you hearing that? Do you feel that's true? That that's the right thing and that's what the party will gravitate towards, or not necessarily?
A little bit of traditional thinking. I think, this is what people have been saying for years. I was on the Bernie campaign, so this was what we dealt in. And then all of the Bernie candidates that came out of his campaign. It's funny, John mentions the C-SPAN moment, because a few years ago, I was on this commission for the DNC, and C-SPAN was there for the final meeting, and they had never filmed anything, and I didn't even know where they were there. And I dropped an F-bomb in the final meeting, and it went totally viral, like millions and millions of views on C-SPAN. And the first call I got was from a political consultant asking me if I wanted to run for office, because there was potential to raise a lot of money out of that video. And I was like, and I did end up running for office, but not because of that. But it was, that just proves that this is exactly, John, you're totally correct. If you can rail against the establishment, say something raw and coming from the heart and, not manufactured, and what Alex says, keep it sustaining throughout your campaign, I think that serves a great purpose for a campaign. But I think some of these candidates are trying to manufacture those raw moments. Cory Booker, case in point, I commend him for standing up there for that long. He didn't have any demands. He didn't get any other senators to come on stage to come up and do the same thing with him. So it did, at the end of the day, appear to much of the internet as performative. He did raise some money. He did build his list, but you have to sustain that list. And, and what I'll add to that, just coming out of the Bernie campaign as well, is the demographics are changing. A lot of these old tactics from 15, 20 years ago that the Democrats have been pushing, more controlled, conservative approaches, you want a moderate with the military background and all that, that may have worked 15, 20 years ago. This next generation, millennials are in their 40s, and Gen Z is going to be coming, into their 30s very soon. And the more traditional voters are sadly aging out. So you're going to have a much younger generation that has grown up through all of the tumult of the last 20 years. And I don't think they want those traditional candidates. I think they want raw candidates who can go after the party in a primary, who can call out the bad guys. And, and it's not just performative anymore. And that's where I think people like Pete Buttigieg and maybe even Wes Moore are going to be struggling a bit, is that they do seem a little bit more packaged than, even if they're younger than the traditional, that's why Bernie was so effective. There's nothing packaged about him.
Right. Amie,
Mark,
the donors, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
quick question to
Yeah.
Nomi and well, anybody. Could it happen again that one of the, let's say it's a younger version of Bernie Sanders. He was the young candidate. He had the young people's support, right? Could that happen again in the Democratic Party? Is the Democratic establishment still strong enough to, if that candidate you're talking about, a new generation appeal, if they seized the party again, could they be stopped?
Well, what we don't have an example of, because 2024 was an incumbent turning into the incumbent vice president. In 2016 and 2020, the Democratic establishment led by the DNC rigged the rules, or Bernie would have been the nominee. So we don't know if the current chair will rig the rules.
I don't think he will. I mean,
okay. So if he doesn't, yeah,
he's of our side. So
yeah,
we're now in control.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm not sure you're right. I say respectfully. I don't think we know enough. He hasn't really showed his cards on how he wants to set up the nomination process.
Only from personal relationships.
Yeah, understood. But it's possible, given the mood of the country and the party, that if they don't rig the rules, the person closest to Bernie, whether that's AOC or someone else, will be the nominee.
The Democratic Party establishment, as it were, is weaker than it's ever been in my lifetime.
Correct. And mine too, and I'm twice your age.
No, that's not quite true, but maybe a few years older, Mark. But it's never been as weak as it is, and Democratic voters are angry at their party establishment for what they saw, and the smart candidates who are running from the outside will use that wedge and place it in exactly the right place and hammer away at it. So the opportunity for an outsider Democratic candidate right now, I think, is huge. And to Namiki's point, I just want to make a kind of a point about the military background. While that can be helpful, we also watched in our lifetimes Chris LaCivita take John Kerry and turn him into Abby Hoffman, right? And we saw Tim Walz get turned into Ranger Bob, right? And I mean, so like, if you're coming at it with the military background in the Democratic Party, you better come correct with what you've got backing you up. And I think that that's not always true for everybody that's worn the uniform, that it's going to be seen, by the Republican side for the Democrats is going to stand back and say, oh, I respect their military service. I don't think that's an automatic.
Right.
We talk about the young veterans in the Democratic Party. Maybe Wes Moore's background carries through for him. I think Ruben Gallego in Arizona, who left Harvard to join the Marine Corps, is in the infantry and went and fought, is going to be hard to undo. But politics is politics, and I think if Democrats look at resume items instead of who's actually a good candidate, they will find themselves having resumes ripped apart.
But
Right.
I think that's why a lot of people are looking at Wes Moore, because he does have that background, but he's more authentic. They're saying that he's more authentic, and we've talked about this before, Mark. But that's sort of the buzz that I'm hearing around him, that he does have that sort of authenticity that Democrats are kind of craving right now.
Right. So just in conclusion on the Democrats, then we're going to talk about the Republicans for a bit, and then your question. So please raise your hand. So there's insider, outsider, establishment, anti-establishment. There's authenticity, and then there's electability, right? And historically, by rigging the rules in 16 and 20, the Democrats picked the most electable, or the most liberal electable candidate, arguably, each time, right? The party has gravitated towards centrists enough to win, even though the issue positions might not be so different from the people on the more to the left. You look at this field, with the exception of AOC, you could argue the governors are outsiders because they're not from Washington, but they're all DNC suck-ups. They're not. Wes Moore and Pete Buttigieg aren't out there saying the DNC is corrupt. Our donors, our big donors, are part of the problem, the way Bernie does, right? The way AOC did, although to me, ironically, she's now trying to moderate, right? But I don't see anybody on this list who will take the position that Donald Trump took in 2016, my party sucks. My party's corrupt. My party's part of the swamp.
Yet.
Well, so that's my question to you, Amie. Who could, with a straight face and skill, besides AOC, because I'm not sure she'll run and she might run and not be effective, who could be the anti-Democratic Party Democratic candidate?
I have a feeling they're all going to try in their own way. You're already
well, but what kind of things? They're not attacking the DNC. They're not attacking the donors of Manhattan.
I mean, what can they attack right now, though, other than I think they're going to start by attacking Biden is the thing. I think that's where they start and say, and that's going to be a litmus test, by the way. I think people are going to corner these candidates and say, did you agree with Biden? Did you know about it? And do you agree with it? And should they have pushed him out? Yeah. And you're starting to hear Democrats talk about that more now.
Well, I'll tell you 3 things they could do, and then we'll talk about the Republicans. One thing is they could say no super PAC, no corporate money. They could say, I think what my party did to Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020 was corrupt, and I demand an open process. And they could take positions like Bernie that are antithetical to the corporatist wing of the Democratic Party. I don't see any of them doing that. I think they're all corporatists.
Walz might. I mean, I don't rule him out. I think he's also in line with the Ken Martin reform camp, because Ken Martin was instrumental in his being picked as vice presidential candidate. And I think he's still liked with progressives. And if you have 15 people in a race, he actually might have a shot. And if he tells his version of the story, Andy Bashir might. He's been a little bit critical, a little bit.
If Tim Walz and Rahm runs, Rahm will raise double from Ari what Tim Walz raised in total.
Fair enough.
He's not going to raise any money, but less from Zeke. All right, Republicans. I believe
go ahead.
Yeah.
Since I can speak with authority on this, with some authority being as I have helped elect probably more Democratic presidents than anyone on this phone call. We've got an election in 18 months for the House, and Republicans, a brake pedal off your election, the world's going to be very different, and there are going to be investigations and impeachments and charges, maybe court battles. We're going to be back in large part where we were. Donald Trump is once again going to be the man who defines what the Democratic Party is. And I think the way Democrats are going to separate themselves is the odd and outrage primary. They're going to continue to go left. I don't think that story is finished yet. We're going to get more, not less. I don't think that's the anti-establishment we're going to see. And that's where the money's going to be.
Which money?
Political money for Democrats. Big money, little money.
Being against Trump?
He's going to suck up everything. He's the leader of the Democratic Party, and he's going to be more so. There's no oxygen other than him. If that happens, it may not. Losing the House may kill Democrats because it keeps them in the past.
Losing the House or winning the House?
Winning the House. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say quickly, I agree with Alex here that the mistake Democrats are going to make, especially if they pick up the House, is that they will continue to be an anti-Trump coalition instead of figuring out what the hell their party is for in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Right. Just one rule for anyone who's invited by Lori to come on and be part of our 2028 series. You're not allowed to say we can't know until after the midterms. That ruins the whole thing. We're leapfrogging the midterms. We're assuming they're not dispositive. All right, Republicans. I want you to answer the question on the premise that that JD Vance runs and Trump endorses him, which I believe will happen. Okay. If that happens, I think Don Jr. and Tucker and Charlie will all be for Tucker. Will all be for Vance. I believe Vance is already getting a stranglehold over the RNC, over the consultant class, over the donor class. I believe that he is developing the apparatus now. So here's my question, Amie. If I'm right, to accept the premise that he runs and Trump endorses him.
Yeah.
What are the 3 biggest stumbling blocks or barriers to Vance being the nominee? Either something he could do or someone else who might run. What are the 3 things that would be part of the scenarios of Vance is not the nominee, even with Trump's endorsement?
See, that's the thing. I have a feeling that he might step on Trump, and we've already seen that in a lot of ways. And so I don't know if he gets his endorsement.
Do you know how hypotheticals work though, Amy? I'm saying I understand he might not,
Yeah.
but if Trump endorses him,
Yeah.
what would stop him from the nomination? Somebody else running, name the person, or a weakness you see that he has with the Republican nominating electorate? What would be the things in his way?
I think other folks like Rubio and other Republicans could potentially slow him down. But I think you're right. I think at this point, everyone's focused on him. He's already getting questions about it. And yeah, I really don't know what would trip him up.
Anybody have anything or anybody to offer? If Rubio, if Vance runs with Trump's endorsement, is there someone who could run and beat him for the nomination? Is there something he could do wrong? What would stop him? And just to be clear, to me, it's a straw man question. I think we're on. If the trajectory stays this way, I think he's going to be the nominee without any challenge.
I'm trying to imagine, even if we had, say, a recession and Trump's numbers sank, he'd still be rock solid with the
Yeah.
mega base in the Republican Party. I can't imagine a thing. I mean, the candidates it could be Rubio, maybe a Sarah Huckabee, but you're all talking number 2 slots, not number 1 slot.
Yeah. I don't think Rubio will run against him under that scenario. Since Trump became Trump, if he endorses in a primary, it's dispositive. He's almost 100% effective, and that goes to fundraising and everything. I mean, so I'll just open it up again before we move to the second topic on the Republican side. Can anybody name a person who could, not would, but could beat Vance in a primary, in a nomination fight if he had Trump's endorsement? Anybody want to offer a name of somebody who could?
Mark, I don't even think JD would lose it even if Trump didn't endorse him.
Well, that's possibly true also, but I think that it would be weird if Trump didn't endorse him, even though Reagan didn't endorse Bush and Clinton didn't endorse Gore and Obama very much didn't endorse Biden.
The vice presidency is an endorsement.
But we're talking about Trump, and anything can happen. I mean, he's the most unpredictable person that we've seen in modern politics. And yet, and we saw what happened with his former vice president and the rip between the two of them. And so, we're 6 months in? How do we know that like 3 months from now, they're not going to start hating each other and Trump's not going to start bad mouthing him? And there we go.
You're absolutely right. So we're doing a McLaughlin style exit question, and then we're going to go to your question. So please raise your hand on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no possible endorsement and 10 is certitude that Trump endorses Vance. What's the prospect of a Trump endorsement of Vance for the 2028 nomination? Nomi.
5 for the same reason that Amy just said, that we'll
5.
never know. And also
5.
Rubio could be swapped out. Maybe that's why he's willing to suck it up and
right. Okay. 5. John Allen.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 8, and Rubio is the alternate there. Trump mentions him sometimes first. I think that's to screw with JD more than anything.
Yeah.
But that would be my, 8 for Vance, 1.5 for Rubio, half a point for anybody else.
Alex.
With metaphysical certitude, I say 9.5, but later than we think because Trump wants it to be a show and be people.
9.5. Amy.
I mean, but like, can I just go back to Rubio? I mean, he put Rubio in that slot because he respects the state of the Secretary of State position almost more than VP. So, and John's right. Like, he does kind of try to F with JD Vance in certain ways. So I don't know. I mean, I would say around 9, I would think.
9?
Maybe.
Now, it surprises me you say 9 because when I gave you the hypothetical that he'd endorse, you said, maybe he won't endorse. 9's high.
9's high, but like I go back and forth on this. I teeter. Yeah.
The correct answer is 9. It's 9. Very good. All right. Sue, welcome in.
Republican guys.
That's all right. 5
Mark, I remember the
5's
McLaughlin
good.
group. I'm not sure that everyone else does.
Oh, John, when I do my McLaughlin stuff, it's all anybody talks about. I could, if I had the stamina to do the whole show as John, we'd be doing very well in two-way. Let me say that. Sue, welcome in. Sue lives in Colorado. For those of you who don't know, she's a Democrat-ish, has voted Democratic, but the party is not her favorite currently, I would say.
The DNC is not my favorite right now.
Okay, the DNC. Sue, welcome in. What's your question?
So my question, I've been thinking about this for a couple of days or for a while here. When you hear polls and it says, okay, the Democratic base is supporting this person or that person, and the front runner by name recognition is AOC. Who is the Democratic base? I have voted in probably every election, maybe not school board or whatever, but I haven't voted in every federal and state election since I was 18. I was not always a Democrat, but I have voted reliably Democratic for probably 35 years or more. Am I the base? Because I am not progressive. So Nomi, when you mention, oh, it could be the next Bernie would be the person that Democrats would, support. The people that I talk to, and yes, I'm older, and so some of my, the people I talk to are older, but my kids are much younger. And even when I talk to them, Democrats want a winner. And what I hear from the people that I know is that they want somebody, they want the party to come together. They worry about a woman. They worry about putting a gay person as a nominee just because they want the most electable person to win in 2028. So first off, who is the base? Am I the base? I don't think I'm included in the base. And when you consider someone like myself, who is not progressive, who isn't going to support the progressive candidate, where do you go from there? Because the names that get thrown out are mostly progressives.
Brilliant question. Hey, Nomi, first.
I think some of this is manufactured media constructs. So Bernie Sanders, even when we wanted him to lean a little bit more into identity because he had some weaknesses and attacks on that, he is a populist. What he talked about were issues that could have spilled over with the Trump base as well. He was talking about economic security, healthcare as a human right, Medicare for all, things that poll very high across the board with working people. And so we've always said that we wanted the Democratic Party to lean into issues that relate to everyday people rather than just identity, exactly what you're saying. And I think now it's being used as a weapon against progressives when progressives never really were the ones pushing the identity. They were always pushing the more populist approach to politics, including AOC, who does weave in identity. She's more like what they call intersectional. So, I think you're asking the right questions. And I think that's also why he polls better than most Democrats, if not all of them right now. We had a 10-year reunion 2 days ago. 10 years after he announced his presidency, his presidential campaign, he's still polling higher, and it's only consistently gotten better. So, I believe that the base is working people and talking about issues that relate to them in their everyday lives. I think that all of the identity politics is window dressing and consultant speak and what they want to push on folks to divide folks. But at the end of the day, I would go to a Bernie rally and I would be next to a firefighter, and I would be next to a worker at one of the hotels in Nevada, and students who were saddled by student loan debt. It was a pretty diverse audience, and I think that's what we need with our next candidate, is somebody who can bring in the most people together with all different backgrounds with the same concerns and needs. I don't know if that answers your question.
Bernie was running early on and he was like, okay, free college for all and all this other stuff. And, I'm somebody who saved for my kids' college when they were 2 and 4. And, my sister's kids took out loans. And we're having conversations with people going, wait a minute, you can't do this. And now when you have the Democrats saying, okay, this new big, beautiful bill is going to add, it is adding trillions to the deficit. How can the progressives go out there and say that they want all this stuff that's free for all? You can't. It's a different environment right now, in my opinion, as a voter.
Well, in New York, we have it, for instance. I mean, it's not a perfect situation, but Andrew Cuomo, who is by no means a progressive, passed a free college bill with Bernie at his side. Not perfect, but we also have pre-K and 3K, which came about because we taxed the wealthy. It's just about where you tax people. And I think if Democrats are in power,
in New York are ridiculous. I lived there for years. I had a 1,800 square foot house built in 1962, and I was paying $11,500 in real estate taxes. I moved to North Carolina, buy a house that's 3,500 square feet, and I paid $2,300.
How are the Broadway shows in North Carolina, Sue?
Well, we had other shows, but
Okay.
Broadway for all. That's what I would run on.
Broadway for all.
Mayoral race here in New York.
I never got down to see Broadway, except when I was living in the city. So,
but what Sue's talking about is why Republicans are going to have an electoral math advantage pretty soon, which is that a lot of people are moving from higher expense states to lower expense states, and we're seeing, we will see in the next census a whole bunch of electoral votes added to southern states that vote Republican.
Yeah,
I know that's a little off topic, but I want to touch real quick also on something that Nomi said in response to Sue, which is about identity politics. The Democrats will play identity politics with their presidential candidate at their own peril.
Yep.
Nobody, like when you get to a general election, you're talking about swing voters in swing states, much less everybody else. And I actually think it's a broader category that say to themselves, I just want to see the best candidate. I just want the president who's going to protect my family and make the economy as strong as it possibly can be. And I don't care if that person is white, black, orange, green, male, female, whatever. And if the Democrats think about their candidates that way that they have thought about social policy, which is a different question.
right.
I think there are times when you look at social policy and you might say to yourself, this is a group that needs help, or like the Americans with Disabilities Act, for example, you would say, well, that's, there's some identity politics in that. When you're talking about a presidential candidate, it's the best candidate, not what they look like or what their background is.
But it's also someone who, Nomi talked about that the base is working class. The Democratic Party has lost its way with the working class. That's the whole point of this exercise. And that's why they're kind of struggling right now. They need to win back all these people who were traditionally Democrats and now are supporting Trump. The Republican Party is doing a much better job than the Democratic Party has done for years in speaking to those people. And those people are drawn to the Republican Party, and they shouldn't be. I think the parties have flipped in a way.
Alex, and then I've got one question for Sue before she goes. Alex.
Well, I'd just like to say, I think John is right, but your passion in a primary is your regret in a general. To get through a primary, I've been in a party that lost the middle a lot. It hurts. And when you lose the working class, when you lose folks like Sue, what's left is the extreme. And that's what's happened now to Democrats. So this primary and caucus process, it ain't going to be about the general. It's going to be about, I'm a little more outraged than you are, and populism is going to do a little of that. But I'm afraid that the passion is going to be on the issues that are expensive in a general.
But if you look at Joe Biden, and Mark, I'm sorry, give me like 10 seconds.
Yeah, of course.
If you look at Joe Biden's coalition in 2020, his primary coalition in 2020, it was moderate whites, centrists, and black voters who were essential to winning a Democratic nomination. Black voters were not voting, and they're not a monolith. Obviously, everybody's got their own individual voting preferences, but most black voters were not voting for Biden because they saw him as a progressive on race issues. The history of Joe Biden was basically the opposite of that within the Democratic Party. They were voting for him because they thought he was the best candidate to beat Donald Trump, to get into a general and win. And, if the Democrats think about it more like that, they will end up with better candidates.
All right. The co-author of Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, Amie Parnes, needs to go, I believe. So, Amie, thank you for spending time with us. All good. All good. Thank you, Amie. John, thank you for that. Sue, before you go, what are the prospects you would support Rahm Emanuel if he ran for president?
Pretty high, because he's a fighter. I go back to something Michael Smerconish is always saying about Trump. He brings a gun to a knife fight. Rahm Emanuel would be the same kind of candidate. He's a fighter. He would not back down. And that's something in my mind that if he declared right now, I'd sign up and give him $5 a month. Absolutely.
See, I think of him now as a striped panted diplomat, but maybe that's just me.
He was a
Sue,
bad mayor. He was a
yeah.
really bad mayor and
Yeah.
very
Yeah, no, I'm telling you what Nomi just said. The left will crush him. Will crush him.
And it's
He'll
going to be
crush
like Bloomberg, because Bloomberg was really tough until he got
Yeah.
on stage, and then
Yeah.
he was.
So yeah,
And the problem is you can sister soldier to an extent, but if the left is showing up at all your events and saying you're a horrible mayor and you're a horrible person, good luck. Sue, thank you. Grateful to you. We'll see. All right. So lots of hands up, and I want to get lots of people in. So here's what we're going to do. And again, I do this with peace, love, and understanding in my heart. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Don't say where you are from. Don't need to say your name. Just ask a short question, and one person on the panel will answer it. And if anyone deviates from the rules, I'm just muting you and bringing you off. That's because I love you all equally. All right, so here we go. One short question. One person will answer, and then we're done. Adam, welcome in. Go ahead after you unmute. You're good. Go ahead.
Thank you. Short question. Given Alex's comment about the Democrats losing the middle, the working class, how does a centrist, moderate, maybe establishment Democrat create or carve a path forward in a primary in 3 years?
Great question. Who would like to briefly answer Adam's question? One of you. I'll pick. John Allen.
Yeah, I think the answer is that they have to distance themselves from what Mark would call the corporate overlords, and actually be willing to offer an economically populist or progressive message that was far greater than what we saw from Kamala Harris in the last election, which was very sensitive to what Wall Street would allow.
I wouldn't call them the economic overlords. I'd call them my neighbors on the Upper West on the Upper West Side. Sharon, welcome in. One short question, please.
Does anybody think we're ever going to get to a point where it's a more condensed primary? Like instead of having it staggered, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Super Tuesday, why don't we vote all at once? It seems like certain states are eliminating the choice of other states.
Yep. Great question. Nomi.
So part of that is just state law, some of that. So go to your state and go lobby for that. I was on the commission where we rewrote the rules for the DNC primary, and it was a battle that you've never seen before. And even after all that, they still pushed it. So I do think it's a lot more condensed than it used to be. And that serves the choice. That served Joe Biden. Joe Biden hadn't won anything, and then Super Tuesday happened, and he won South Carolina, and everything changed. So when you start to condense things like that, understand that you have to have more money to hit more states at once, and that will serve the candidate who has more money, most likely.
Maybe Ari's brother. Jack, Jack, welcome in. Don't tell folks anything but your short question.
No, it seems to me that the Democrats have gotten lost in the woods, and to get back out, they're going to need somebody a bit more in the middle. And I think specifically either a Wes Moore or an Andy Beshear, because 3 years out, I'd never heard of Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton.
Jack, thank you. Alex, either address those two gentlemen or Jack's premise.
I think, as somebody was saying earlier, Democrats are getting tired of losing, and I think they could turn to, who could actually win this in a general? But as long as Donald Trump is defining who the Democrats are, I think since they haven't figured out a way to get back to the middle again, I think it is unlikely to happen this time. I will say this. Those of you, and there are many of you in this community and around the country, including a lot of sophisticated Democrats, who say it's Wes Moore or it's Beshear. You do not know nearly enough about them to put your hopes and dreams in them. Not nearly enough. I know more about them than most of you do, because it's my job to. And I'm telling you, you're looking at a mirage. They may end up being great, but you are putting all your chips on people you don't know anything about them. You don't know anything about them except the wispiest thing that they bio or one guy ran in a red state.
they are, those two guys, I hear their names over and over. They're so far away from being, from any sense that they're solid. They could be great, but there's no way to know. And the investment in them, to me, is like psychotic, politically psychotic. Lainey, welcome in. What's your question?
Will 2028 be the year of the independent candidate?
Let's all do it in unison. 1, 2, 3. No.
Oh,
No. The conditions are there. The only way there'll ever be an independent candidate is if there's someone with the wealth of Michael Bloomberg, the charisma and biography of Colin Powell, and the quadruple the sanity of Ross Perot. That's my stock line. No, it will not be, because there's no one on the horizon who could do it. Thank you for that. All right, Warren, welcome in. Warren's been involved in Republican politics at a pretty high level in the past. Warren, thank you for joining. Unmute your short question, please.
Yes, can AOC go all the way and win a general election?
Great question. I'd like, you're going to be the last one, Warren, so everybody's going to answer. Why, yes or no, and why? Nomi.
Spot for this one, not this cycle, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years. We have not given enough attention to Pritzker, by the way. I think he has a secret sauce for this election as of right now. And I know that's a little bit crazy coming from somebody who railed against oligarchs, but I see him as like an FDR figure, and, he has the money and he's got the populist approach. So I don't want to rule him out either.
Oligarch with a heart. And Nomi, when you come back, we're going to have an hour-long conversation about his record in Illinois and how you think that's going to allow him to succeed. Alex, can AOC go all the way?
I think Senator AOC could come real close, but no, I think she's too far out of the mainstream. Like Kamala Harris, there's too much social media history on her that she'd have to disavow.
John Allen.
Can she? Yes.
Yes, interesting.
And here's my why.
Yeah.
Here's somebody with a ton of charisma who's young. We watch Republicans bash the junk out of her from day one because why? Because they saw her as somebody who might rise up, and it was smart to do that. And there's plenty of tape on her. Everybody's got tape on them. The question is, how do you bounce back from it? Do you have that? Do you have that flexibility? Do you have that Teflon quality to you? And we don't know that about her yet. And so I'm not saying she will. I'm just saying, do I think there's a path? Could I see a world in which AOC got elected president of the United States? Yes.
And just to Jonathan's point, she hasn't had a real primary. She's my congresswoman, and so you have to be tested too. It's a muscle.
Yeah. That's my favorite moment, maybe of the hour, where Nomi basically said absolutely not, and John Allen said maybe. Yeah. Warren, thank you. All right, these are not predictions. You're not being held to this. This is, as we sit here today, what is your best guess about the top of the ticket 2028 matchup? Not a prediction, just today. What's your analysis of where we're most likely to end up? Democrat nominee, Republican nominee. Alex.
Democrat nominee, I would say Fetterman and somebody else on the ticket.
Now you're just making mischief.
And I'm contributing again, of course.
Yeah.
Top of the Republican ticket, I would say J.D. Vance and Sarah Huckabee.
Okay. You don't need VP, but that's a good bonus. Nomi, top of the ticket, Democrat, Republican.
I'm going to go with Pritzker Moore.
Yeah.
And I'll go with either Vance or Rubio Huckabee, whichever one.
John Allen.
I'm going to go with what Alex said on the Republican side. I think that's those are my picks there.
Yeah.
Throw it up in the air, but let's go Westmore and Slotkin on the Democratic side.
Oh God, please don't do that to me.
The correct answer, Shapiro Vance. We'll be right back with predictions. No, we're done. Thanks to the three of you and to Amie for joining again. John Allen. John, is your book still available?
It is. My book is still available. Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House on all of the various devices and even in hardcover.
Did you guys read the audiobook?
We didn't. I want to do that sometime, but we did not do that.
Who did your book?
Yes, but I can't pronounce his last name.
Is it an actor or is it a professional book reader?
A professional book reader. I want to do my Bill Clinton impression in reading one of these books sometime.
Go ahead. Let me hear you say, "I'll be with you till the last dog dies."
Mark, I'll be with you till the last dog dies.
That's pretty good.
Very good.
Pretty good. Let me hear you say one more. Let me hear you say, Rom, you're a fool to run for president.
I don't want video of me saying that.
Good point.
Roll call, John.
Yeah, good point. Anyway, very grateful to all of you and to Amie for joining, for those who joined and asked questions, and those who joined. Appreciate you being here. And we'll see you tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning on morning meeting. Sean, Dan, and I. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Go, baby.